Greetings, Gothamites! One last time for old time's sake. DIDIO is gone! Yes! 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 Legacy characters get to live and grow! And Goeff Johns is next in line. AT&T is done with the SJW train, ladies and gentlemen. And a big rumor that is making Gal Simone go crazy among other people is that 5G is dead. That means no Luke Fox Batman, no Jonathan Kent Superman, and no Cassie as Wonder Girl. A new direction for DC is going to be starting a lot faster. And the big reason because of this is sales. AT&T is not happy. For the past 2 years, they were promised a continuation of DC Rebirth, and they did not get that. What they got was Heroes in Crisis. What they got was Wally West turned into a villain. What they got was Rick Grayson turned into Chris O'Donnell. And on top of all that, they killed Alfred and so much more. And AT&T, according to rumors, has had enough. DIDIO has also brought in a bunch of crazy NPC whack jobs the past 2 years, such as Zoe Quinn, among others, who have done some very controversial things to the books we love. Now, if Gal Simone is running scared, that means her name is on the chopping block next. Which means this is a good time to be a comic book fan if you love comics characters. Now, I'm not happy that people have lost their jobs. I'm ecstatic that change is coming to DC Comics, because this is something that I have been wanting for some time. And everybody on Twitter, especially the people that are saying the man babies are happy about this. People who love comics are happy about this because Dan Dido was the biggest roadblock for legacy characters. He did not like them. He hated sidekick characters. He hated Nightwing. The man has tried to kill my boy Nightwing for over 20 years. Okay? 20 years. If it wasn't for Goeff Johns, if it wasn't for, oh my gosh, what was his name? He hasn't been at DC for years. He has a YouTube channel. Oh, man. He hasn't really been, I used to know his name. Ethan Van Sciver, that's it. If it wasn't for Goeff Johns, Ethan Van Sciver, Jim Lee, and a few others, then Nightwing would have died not just in 1 year later, but in Forever Evil. Because Dan Dido wanted him dead. He was kind of responsible for the change from Death to, Spy Dick Grayson, but, I mean, you could say it was the lesser of two evils, but they made Dick Grayson kind of a joke, didn't they? Now, as a lifelong Dick Grayson fan, this is very happy news. And the fact that Goeff Johns is in the running to replace him and not Bendis, because some people were praising that with Dido gone, that means you can get an even crazier NPC whack job, which would be Bendis in lead. Bendis does not have seniority at DC. He is not next in line for the co-publisher role. So this is a very good thing. And I'm not upset. I'm upset that the man has probably lost his job, but some people are saying he stepped down from the role. And it was very sudden because he didn't plan on leaving anytime soon. As you've heard for some time, a lot of people have been saying that DC 5G was going to reboot the comics books again. And we just went through DC Rebirth, and it brought people back in their 30s and 40s like me, who left DC Comics with the New 52. New 52 was very controversial, and it did bring in some new readers, but it lost tens of thousands of readers who went to manga, who did other things than buying DC Comics. Dan did have the brilliant idea of bringing in a lot of digital comic books that were old, because that's how DC has stayed afloat these past probably 4 or 5 years, is a lot of DC Comics fans are just reading the old books. Now, there is a nasty rumor going around that AT&T is going to pull the plug on DC Comics now, and Ethan Van Sciver is kind of freaking out about this. I saw his Twitter today. He was like, this is not good news that Dan is gone, because Dan loved DC. And I know that EVS is a little biased because he actually knows Dan and Jim Lee and some of those other guys. So the whole Comicsgate crowd, I don't really agree with on this, because Dan DIDIO was the man in charge mostly. Jim Lee just kind of agreed with him when he came up with his crazy ideas, because Jim Lee is not really an aggressive person the way Dan is. Dan is a guy who, he can get the room to do what he wants. And Jim is more of like a passive guy that's just kind of like, I don't want to rock the boat, but I don't think this is going to be good. He has a wait-and-see attitude. The wait-and-see attitude is over. DC is in trouble. DC has been in trouble when they brought Zoe Quinn in, when they brought Bendis in. They had to take Dan Jargon, a guy who hasn't really been doing much, to come in and save the Superman books, and then they put him on the Nightwing books where he currently is. So, I mean, things have been going crazy for DC for quite some time now, and honestly, other than the Nightwing and the Batman books, I haven't really been reading DC for 5 years. Occasionally I'll pick up a Nightwing book, but ever since he became Chris O'Donnell, I was done. I was like, why? I'll just buy the old books, the Chuck Dixon run. I'll enjoy the Gal Simone, like, Birds of Prey stuff, and, the older Batman books. I'm not reading this garbage. So yeah, I was kind of out of the loop when it came to different villains being killed, because I was done. In my heart, DC was dead. And it feels like somebody has taken a defibrillator to my chest because I feel so alive right now. I don't know what this feeling is. I think they call it happiness. I don't know. My mind is swirling with so many possibilities. I've been so concerned about the DC 5G thing for months. And they've been talking to YouTubers, telling them, this is something to get behind because this is diversity, and diversity sells comics. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It does the opposite. Forced diversity makes people leave comic books. Killing off your favorite characters does not have a fan stick around to see what happens next 5-6 years from now, or 2 to 3 years from now. The only reason the Batman books sold so much in the 90s, when Jean Paul Valley was running around as the Batman, is because you had Batman the Animated Series on television. People saw Batman with their own eyes every day after school. What do we have right now? Nothing. So if you kill Batman, if that was what they were planning, which according to Didio's hit list, that's what he wanted to do. The man had a list like a serial killer of people who he was going to knock off. And he's had it in his office for years. Many years ago, it leaked that in his office for the Who Survived the Crisis thing, it was almost like he was playing bingo with our favorite characters. Now, Jim Lee and Goeff Johns don't do this. If they're going to kill a character, it's for a reason. It's not just because they can't come up with new ideas for the character. And DIDIO just hates legacy characters. He's said it for over, 10, 15 years that he's been in a co-publisher role. Before that, he was a VIP. Whenever I thought of DC Comics, and especially a couple years ago, I was scared when Jim Lee stepped down and became the big head honcho for their television branch. Because you know what that meant? That meant a lot of trouble for DC. When Jim Lee left his bigger role at DC Comics, that's when we got Heroes in Crisis. That's when we got Tom King. That's when Bendis came. That's when Zoe Quinn came. And among other people, who I just really don't want to name because it makes me want to vomit. Especially the fact that they have a woman responsible for killing a guy writing Batman books. I mean, I really hope AT&T does a clean sweep because, I think there's a lot of hope left in DC Comics. I'm not one of those people that's saying, 80 years of DC Comics, it's over. No. DC Comics had a rebirth. They can have another. 5G was not that. 5G was the final nail in the coffin, and somebody got wise and was like, you know what? I think we need to just slow down a little bit, and things aren't going quite the way they're supposed to right now. They really aren't. People aren't buying the Nightwing books. Batman books are the lowest they've been in sales for over 20 years. Batman is always the leading selling comic book in our industry. He's not anymore. He's barely making 80,000 an issue in terms of books. And that's including digital sales. He was 100K to 150 to 200K book a month for years. And now, it's just so much less. Now, people blame the economy, people blame so many things, but they don't want to blame the comics pros. They're the ones at fault. It's not us, the readers. All we want is good stories, and we want to see our characters treated right. If you want to kill our characters, cool. Do it in a way that actually brings justice to them, like they do in manga, when Vegeta sacrificed himself to stop Majin Buu. That was a heroic end that people got behind, because when Vegeta came back, he was a different person. Shooting Dick Grayson in the head and turning him into Chris O'Donnell is not a good course correction for comics. It had the opposite effect. Nightwing books were actually doing pretty well during DC Rebirth, when he went back to Bloodhaven, when a possibility between him and Batgirl were a thing. Him interacting with the Bat family again and not being this crazy secret agent. And then, what do? Tom King shoots him right in the head. And it's done. What do we get? Chris O'Donnell. Now, honestly, I haven't read all the Nightwing books with Chris O'Donnell, leather jacket wearing punk who hates authority and is just, I don't know, breaking into people's houses and being Chris O'Donnell from the 95 Batman movie. That's basically what he is. I was waiting for him to do Kung Fu Laundry. Maybe it happened in the books. I don't know. But I was waiting for it, because he even called Alfred Al. I have never known what is going on creatively in Dan's head, because it seems like he has people, or rather had, because he's gone, he had people at DC to tell him, this is not right, we shouldn't do this, you know? And they just went along with a lot of the things he wanted to do, and a lot of those were very bad decisions. I honestly believe in my heart that Dan loves comic books and he loves Batman, but he just wasn't very good as a leader. And you need a strong leader to really do justice to these characters. I think getting a younger person in who has shown that they've done a lot of great work with comic books would be great. Or if you could bring back some older people who were involved with DC Comics, that would be great as a co-publisher. I'd love to see that too. I'm not really good with names, but there was a gentleman who used to be at DC Comics who went to Marvel several years ago. Did a lot of great things for Marvel, and he's currently a free agent. He's not as young as Goeff Johns, but I've always loved his work with Batman The Long Halloween and so many other great things. He also was the gentleman who brought us Red Hood. So if anybody could lead DC in their time of darkness, as the NPCs on Twitter are freaking out, thinking that, you know, the Comicsgate crew is now going to stamp out diversity, that's never what this has been about. And I'm not really part of that group anyway. I know everyone. I've been on YouTube for 15 plus years. So I get around. I just don't really get involved with the drama stuff because it's not really who I am, but what I do that defines me. And yes, I stole that quote because it's a great quote. So I don't think this is the end. I think that there's still a possibility the Phoenix can rise unless Monday AT&T announces that they're closing DC Comics and not releasing new books and instead focusing on the television properties like Harley Quinn and different like new Batman cartoons and movies and things like that. But DC Comics is important. It's also important to our industry because if DC goes, that doesn't mean Marvel Comics is safe. Marvel Comics has been in hot water for years with Disney. And if they see that AT&T can destroy DC Comics, just theoretically, then the mouse will pull the plug on Marvel Comics to save money. The mouse had no problem killing Disney Infinity which was a growing video game brand, and shuffling all of their video game departments to only mobile. They did it without batting an eye because that game franchise did not meet its quota of $3 to $4 billion. It only made $2.5 billion with Disney Infinity 3. And Disney was like, well, you guys, you tried, so you're done. And just like that, Avalanche, all those studios, gone. Disney Interactive, established way back in the 90s, had its doors closed just like that. Bigger companies in charge of your properties does not mean you're safe. Ever. That's why I hate monopolies. When you have smaller groups controlling things and your own intellectual properties, you're safer. When you have a big corporation calling the shots, it's not a good thing. But I'm hoping that people at AT&T will be smart about this. If they really did weed out some of Dan's ideas, and rather than Dan, he probably had a hissy fit about not being able to do the DC 5G. The man is very passionate about his work. I'm not saying I would love to see Dan having a hissy fit and being told no for once in his life, because he is not the man responsible for DC Rebirth. DC Rebirth was a Jim Lee and Goeff Johns idea because the New 52 was failing. Yet, I'm sick and tired of seeing all of these different Twitter posts and news articles popping up that Dan DIDIO was in charge of the New 52. He was basically the head honcho, but most of his ideas, they didn't do. New 52 was Goeff Johns trying to save DC Comics, along with all the other people attached who were talented writers at that time. DIDIO had a lot of crazy plans for DC Rebirth. In fact, he didn't want to do DC Rebirth. He didn't want to do Convergence. Those characters, he killed them off. They were done. Convergence wasn't his idea. He didn't want people to have the option of reading their favorite characters from the Silver Age and the Bronze Age. That was done. That was over. Hey, if you want to read Batman comics, here's the New 52. Enjoy this. Look, we got a younger Batman running around on a motorcycle. You want Green Lantern? Cool, here's a Green Lantern book. He did not want to bring up any characters that were gone. He didn't want a multiverse. Convergence did so well that Dan Jargon came back and gave us the great Superman books. I am not a Superman fan. I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm not. But I read almost every issue of Dan Jargon's run on the Superman family after Lois gave birth to Jonathan in Convergence. And that was great storytelling. I did not have any issues when that man came back and wrote Superman and got rid of the New 52 Superman. Dan DIDIO, he does love superheroes, but he only likes younger superheroes. Maybe it's because he had a midlife crisis, or probably because he just doesn't know how to use them. But there are fans all over the world of these legacy characters. Heck, I grew up with Wally and Nightwing. When they decided to have their new identities, I was alive during that time. I grew up with these characters. Most people my age did. And we related to them. And as time went on and Dan's power grew and his evil mustache, which he used to twirl and laugh in his office, I'm just making that up, but I could totally see it. Because the man is evil when it comes to certain things. So, this is not a sad day. It is a time of celebration and Batman disco music. And don't believe the comic pros, because some of them are going to be on the chopping block. Some of them are not safe. And that's a good thing, because they've been a disgrace to DC Comics for 2 to 3 years. I won't be sad seeing them go. Some of them, they were very talented in their time. They were. But when it comes to DC, they've lost touch with reality, and they just want to appease Twitter trolls. Twitter trolls don't buy comics. People like K-Wing, who was a pull list supporter for over 20 years, buy lots of comics, or did. I only buy manga now. Occasionally a digital issue of, Nightwing, or sometimes Batgirl. The Batgirl books got kind of weird. And the Batman books, it just, I don't know, it was like watching a friend of yours who's terminal. And the fact that I knew what was going to happen to the character, even the whole pregnancy with Catwoman, I couldn't really get involved with that, it's like, oh, that's great, she's pregnant. Well, he's going to die this year, so tragedy follows the Waynes, like the Grim Reaper or something, I couldn't get into these characters. I couldn't invest into them because I never knew what was going to happen. It's, it wasn't even great stories either. Most of the stories that are going on with DC are very boring because they just don't want to pay attention to it. They just want to do what Marvel did, and Marvel, from what I hear from a friend of mine who's a very big supporter of Marvel again, who left Marvel Comics after Civil War and One More Day, he told me that Marvel is actually healing itself from the SJW virus, the cancer that had grown and caused so many problems. There are a lot of books that are rejecting it and just focusing on what made the characters so great. I'm not saying that diversity is a bad thing, but if it's used as a weapon to alienate established readers by trying to bring in new readers that don't really buy comics, they just care about your political agenda, so to speak, and they support you on Twitter and, for a while, and then the next cause comes and they just migrate to that like a bunch of lemmings. And then when that's done, either they run off the cliff or they go somewhere else. They're not fans. They've never been fans. If they were fans, well, the comic book industry wouldn't be in the dire straits that it's been for 5 years now. If they really were fans, they would buy your books. Not just a couple books so they can go on Instagram and say, even if we're, quote, SJWs, we're still comic fans. Look at our limited comic collection. That doesn't count. Any Yahoo could walk into a comic book store, buy a bunch of books, and then go on their Instagram. That doesn't make you a comic fan. It makes you a shill. Makes you a fraud. And that's what a lot of these people are. Some of them are crying that DC Comics is going to go back to the 50s. What are you people smoking? And that's not to you, the fans. I'm just talking to people on Twitter. The crazy Twitter mobs. Because Dan DIDIO was their champion. I did hear that recently DIDIO did get married, and I wish him the best. I really do. And if he's retiring, cool. It's time for some new leadership at DC. And I think some of the talented writers who have done some amazing things with these characters, they can step it up. If Jim Lee can do a good job the way he's done, then someone with a lot of heart and passion can do it as well that's been at DC. Heck, I would nominate... it wouldn't happen because it'd be very difficult, and the man would never go back, but I really enjoyed that Green Lantern guy's work. And I loved his stuff when he worked with Goeff Johns, too. I wasn't really a fan of all his Batman work. He only did a couple books, but they ran a bunch of people out of DC Comics the past 5 years, and I think that they could do really good work if they came back. I mean, Dan was not Dan DIDIO, the Superman guy. I don't know what happened to him before DC Rebirth. I remember he wrote some amazing Superman stuff in the 90s. He gave us The Death of Superman, The Reign of the Superman, and a bunch of other stuff, and then the guy just kind of disappeared, and the Superman books were, I don't know, so-so. And all of a sudden, it feels like the dude came out of retirement for DC Rebirth, and I, a lifelong Batman fan, enjoyed reading Superman books. See, that's the magic of these characters. And if you treat them right, and you do right by the fans are not your enemy. The fans have never been your enemy. Even though Twitter tries to have the creators and the fans at war with each other, there's common ground with these characters. There's a lot of things you can do. You don't have to listen to an outspoken minority of people that are, calling for all this change when, yes, change is good for comics, but not drastic change. It has to be eased in. It has to make sense. And certainly you don't want your comic pros to attack people. Now, there are some things about Dan that I don't like. Didio, Dingbat, whatever you want to call him. But I like how I never saw him attack fans on Twitter. There were bigger Marvel people that would go and have fights with their consumers, but Dan actually went to conventions. Even though maybe he did it for sadistic purposes, he loved to tease Nightwing and Wally West fans and Titans fans and Green Lantern fans. and Robin fans. Yes, he's responsible for Tim Drake the Duck, although I don't know if that's going to stick now. I have no idea if they're still going to go through with their crazy crisis and kill off so many legacy characters this year. No idea what's going to happen. We've already seen a course correction this year, though, or at the end of last year, when they fired that Nightwing writer. They completely scrapped at least 6 months of books and brought in somebody new. They brought in the Superman guy to make Nightwing again. And yeah, it's been kind of a lengthy process, but I'm pretty sure by the summer, Nightwing's going to be back. He's going to be fighting Joker starting next month. That wasn't going to happen before. He's going to be running around with a whole identity crisis. It was really clever for them to use the Court of Owls to kind of reboot Chris O'Donnell back to being Robin, back to being Dick Grayson. In fact, most characters in comics right now aren't even calling Dick Rick anymore. They're calling him Richard again. Joker is targeting Richard Grayson and all the other Bat family members. He's not going after, this crazy skinhead guy. Which, by the way, Dick actually has hair again. If you guys want to pick up a book. It's a little weird, but if you enjoy the Court of Owls stuff, I've really liked the writing style. It's very different than what we saw with angsty Chris O'Donnell. And I'm not pleading with you guys to buy their books or anything. I'm just saying if you want to read some good Dick Grayson stories and see the possibility of the character being reborn or fixed this year, Dan's actually doing a good job writing Nightwing, which is surprising. Because it almost feels like Chuck Dixon is, behind the pen. That's how good the books are becoming. And he's also using a villain that most people would kind of ignore. I'm not talking about the Joker. I'm talking about the Court of Owls. They've just been kind of off in the distance, so to speak. They haven't really been utilized in the comics at all after Snyder left. And the Court of Owls is becoming a really big threat. This could also be why the Court of Owls is in that video game that's coming out. They're trying to make the Court of Owls stick in your mind as this very dangerous, not just cult, but dangerous group of individuals that can cause a lot of problems for, not just Grayson, but other members of the Bat family. And you can thank Dan for that. So I see these as characters continuing, actually. With the whole Wally West thing, I haven't really... I admit, after Heroes in Crisis, I just kind of... I don't know. It wasn't Wally West for me. Wally West was driven insane by Tom King. It was almost like reading Young Reverse Flash. How many of you... honestly, what did you think of the twist in Heroes in Crisis? Did it make you want to read more comics by DC? I want to see how many Wally West fans we have here. How did you guys feel about Wally? When he was revealed as the big bad, what did you guys think? I was crushed. Oh, wow, we got a bunch of members here. What's going on? Holy cow, that's a lot of people watching. Wasn't expecting this. This is just kind of like my mini rant thing and celebration party. Should I play the disco music some more? Good night, babe. Love you too. I think we're behind. Like, how far behind on the chat am I? I'm trying to see what you guys think of Wally. I'm trying to see how many Wally fans we got. Hail General Zod's fandom zone. I'm not familiar with... Greetings and hail to Lord Doomcock. Can't stay for long because I'm about to head to work, but I wanted to simply stop by and say... Doomcock. Where have I heard that name? I think we're getting raided, folks. Alright, so I'm not going to get an answer to my question. That's fine. I'll just assume that a lot of you guys were devastated by the whole Wally West incident. There were actually people at DC that didn't like the idea of Wally being turned into the villain. But you know when you get a group of friends together and it's just kind of like, You're both excited for the same thing. It feels like Tom King worked off the energy that Dan DIDIO had, and some of the... You have to view it as like different sects inside DC Comics. You got Jim Lee's crew, and you got Dan's crew, and you got Goeff Johns supporters. And for whatever reason, the most vocal was Dan's crew the past, we'll say, 2 to 3 years. Tom King did not want to do a lot of the controversial things he did in his Batman books, but he went and he talked to, quote, DC, which was Dan, because Jim Lee, remember, was not around at DC Comics. Yes, he was still co-publisher, but he was doing most of his time at DC Television since, I believe, end of 2018 is when he transitioned to that role, like as the big lead guy. So Jim wasn't present for a lot of the changes. And it feels like DC Rebirth became what Dan wanted to become with Heroes in Crisis. Heroes in Crisis was like one of the first things that Jim was not heavily involved in, from what I hear. And it shows. It was like reading a completely different thing, because Wally, when he returned, that was the hope of DC. That was the hope of pulling back fans that had left, like I did. And I never felt like I was alone in this. I really feel like the New 52 created a huge divide at DC Comics and with DC Comics fans. I still know people today that even after DC Rebirth, they didn't come back. They don't want to come back. And that sometimes is pretty upsetting to me. It's kind of like, I tried really hard. I worked with some PR companies during the whole DC Rebirth thing. My videos didn't go viral on their own. I was a huge YouTube supporter of DC Rebirth when it first started, and when the rumors started for it. And I enjoyed working with Warner Brothers again, like during that time. I was excited for DC Comics. And then Heroes in Crisis happened, and some other stuff. And it's just like, I didn't care anymore. I might have gone a little crazy too, because there hasn't been a new Batman game in probably 5 or 6 years. I really don't want to not count the Telltale games, but the Telltale games were kind of weird. You know what I mean? I had some fun with them, don't get me wrong, but it didn't really feel like a main dish. It was more like an appetizer for Batman games. You know what I mean? I did the best I could with it. I milked it for about 1.5 years. Tried. I did some crazy streams, but it didn't feel the same. For a time, I wanted to do DC Comics reviews and things like that, but Rebirth felt like the New 52 again. You know what I mean? Like, you all know what the New 52 was. It was about younger superheroes and condensing all this lengthy history from DC Comics after Crisis on Infinite Earths. And, what was that? Infinite Crisis? Or whatever that one was. You know, foregoing all this history to try to make something fresh. And maybe a lot of fans would have been more on board with it if they hadn't kicked so many characters to the curb. And it wasn't DIDIO who brought back a lot of your favorite legacy characters. He had a hit list, remember? He didn't care. There wasn't going to be a continuation for Dick Grayson after Forever Evil. He was going to die. Because Dan believes the best way to use legacy characters is to kill them. He doesn't care about the consequences. He just cares about, well, no one likes legacy characters. If that was true, then Robin wouldn't be celebrating 80 years this year in 2020. If Robin was just a sidekick, then he would have been kicked to the curb 30, 40 years ago. People love these characters. And maybe at one point in his life, Dan did too. And I don't know what happened, because I remember Dan was responsible and pretty sane for a lot of the great DC animated films that you guys remember. He was paramount with Jim Lee and Goeff Johns and Jude Winnick to give us amazing Batman animated movies such as Under the Red Hood. And then something happened. I don't know. I wish I could tell you, but I have no idea. I think it's because the DC movies started to do a lot of the New 52 stuff. Justice League War wasn't a completely bad movie, but it wasn't really a good movie. It was an okay movie. It didn't have that same spark as a lot of the earlier DC animated films of that time. The Wonder Woman movie, Under the Red Hood. You know? It was okay. Not to say that all those movies are bad, but it just has like a different rhythm to it that just doesn't connect with people. Kind of like the DC Cinematic Universe, in a way. And Flashpoint was kind of like the beginning of the end for those. But Dan was heavily involved with that stuff. He did a lot of those DC animated movies, up until The Killing Joke. Which, yeah. He wasn't really responsible for the Batman Ninja movie, which is pretty good, actually. It's not bad. There's some younger people involved with that one. Mostly Japan, but it wasn't all bad. Gotham by Gaslight, I don't think he was really involved with that one too much either. Oh my gosh. Merge Rebirth with the New 52. I don't think that's going to work. Sorry about that. My phone was going crazy. We don't have 800 people. I don't know what's going on. That's not right. My phone connected to somebody else. That's hilarious. I was like, I'm being raided by some guy named Doomcock? No. Not likely. I am in my own little corner of the internet, far away from anyone else. I'm like a shadow. I'm fine with that. Oh, now I can actually see what's going on with my chat, though. This is great. I was getting into a sermon here. Let's just go back to the pre-52. I don't see that happening, though. Flashpoint kind of is over. I have no idea who that was. YouTube recommended something really weird for me on my phone. Because I was live talking to you guys, and all of a sudden, boom! My phone is on some other YouTuber I've never heard of. I will be talking about the Batsuit tomorrow, if you guys don't mind, because I was right about them using utility belt that had, like, more of a carpenter's belt. I'm pretty excited about that. The motorcycle thing, there was a rumor about that before, so that came out to be true. Not so much on the muscle car yet, but definitely some stuff with the Batbike, but it looks like they're having some issues with the Batbike on set. Like the, whatchamacallit? The stunt guy fell over a couple times. Yes, we'll be breaking down the new Batsuit tomorrow, guys. Like the full thing. I don't think DC's going to shut down at all. No. I think that it's going to get a rebirth. And like I said, Jude Winnick, which I can never say his name right, he's no longer at Marvel. And he's going to be looking for a new job. And he knows the people at DC. See, DC, Twitter is wrong. DC is not all former crazy Marvel writers ruining DC Comics right now. There are a lot of old guards still at DC. They're very quiet, and they're probably worried about being fired like EVS was, but they're still there. They're still behind the scenes, and they still, some of them are writing books. Dan Jargon is a pretty good, decent guy. I mean, Chuck Dixon isn't there anymore, but, I mean, he's from the old guard. You know what I mean? And he's still there, writing Nightwing books of all things now. I mean, Goeff Johns is writing books, and I don't know if he'll take over. I mean, he loves DC Comics. There's no way he's just going to let AT&T destroy and fold DC Comics. I don't believe that. There are some people on Twitter saying, you know, with Dan gone, that means DC Comics is dead. Goeff Johns loves DC Comics. So much so that he went back to writing books again. And left his position in film to go back to what he loved about the movies. Or loved about the comics. I don't know if Bendis will leave DC, but he is a friend of Dan. It was going back to the whole gang thing I was telling you about. Jim Lee's gang and Dan Didio's gang. Like, I would say that Bendis is part of Dan's crew. Whereas Goeff Johns is more, he sides with Jim Lee. Jim Lee and Goeff Johns were responsible for saving a lot of your legacy characters. They were responsible for most of DC Rebirth's great ideas. The return of Wally West, the return of the Titans. Dan's ideas are turning Tim Drake into a duck by letting Bendis do whatever he wants with those legacy characters. I've never met anybody in the industry that hates legacy characters more than Dan, in any comic book branch. The people at Boom Studios, they love their legacy characters for the Power Ranger books. They find a way of using them. Mighty Morphin still lives on. And they're making really good stories with, like, the Omega Rangers. They're not just a group that started and then you just toss them. I mean, there's a lot that they can do with those characters, and the people who are writing those books, they understand that. Marvel is starting to be very good with their legacy characters, too. They've had, like, an interesting track record with their legacy characters. I mean, Bucky was gone for a very long time, and then right around the time that Red Hood surfaced, Bucky came back. So, you know. But I would really want the man who resurrected Jason Todd to be the co-publisher with Jim Lee. I think that both those guys together could make some really interesting things happen. And what's important to me about getting someone who understands these characters in charge is because they can see the future before them. They understand what to do with them. It's not like, let's put a character's name on the board, throw a dart at it, and see if they live or die. That's not a way to run a comic book giant like DC Comics. It's not a game. It's not, you know, let's have a kill list of all these characters that we're just going to wipe off the face of the earth. You know? That's not how you run comics. I've never liked that. A character death, again, is supposed to mean something. It's not just supposed to be a means to an end to try to get people to buy books. And I really think that Jude would do a fantastic job as Dan's job. And I think that he could actually not resuscitate DC, because DC isn't dead yet. DC's not on life support. I thought DC was. I really did. I was kind of worried about them for a while with the whole 5G rumors that they've been talking to YouTubers about and trying to get people that aren't comic book people. They were trying to get not the drama channels involved, but, you know, the more agenda-based activist people, telling them about all the changes to DC. Excuse my language, but like a black Batman and, you know, possibly a different type of Superman, you know, who they can twist his likes and preferences. A strange version of Wonder Woman, even though Cassie is probably a great character, but apparently something was going to happen to Cassie to change her, kind of like what they did to She-Hulk. Now, this is all rumors, but the DC 5G thing was real. And if you guys knew what happened to She-Hulk over the past, was it 3 or 4 years? She used to be a very attractive character, and then something happened to her. So they were planning on doing something similar Frankenstein-wise to Cassie, Wonder Girl, so that they don't have to worry about body shaming people. They can have a positive, bigger character for women as like part of the DC Trinity. At least that's what the rumor was. And my jaw dropped because I was just kind of like, I don't have a problem with them making Cassie Wonder Woman, but why would you make her Fat Woman? I don't get it. What's up, gang? Hey, Cammy. I mean, Super Sons is kind of... Whoops, there goes my phone. Super Sons is kind of hard to do, gang, because have any of you been, like, looking at what Bendis has done to Superboy of late? Jonathan got a growth spurt. He and Damian are kind of friends, but they're not in the same age group anymore. It kind of reminds me of what I went through. Like, I had a friend who I thought was the same age as me when I was younger, And we had the same name. His name was Luke. My name was Luke. And I didn't know he was 3 years older than me. So when he was in the same grade school as I was, we were thick as thieves. We hung out. We did all the same things together. We played all the same games. We went to like sleepover parties and hung out at movies, read comics together. And then lo and behold, the guy goes to junior high, and it's like, whoa, wait a second. This dude's 3 years older than me. He looks exactly the same size as me. He looks just as young as me. And I was thinking, you know what? It's going to be fine. We're still going to run in the same circle, even though I'm in grade school and he's in junior high now. We're still going to hang out. We're still best friends. Yeah, no, didn't happen. He went to junior high, got all new friends. I got left behind. Same thing is happening to Damian in DC Comics. Superboy aged to like a teenager, like teenager. Think of it kind of like in Dragon Ball Z when Gohan went from being 12 or 13 fighting Cell, and then fast forward to the Great Saiyaman arc. It's kind of like that, you know? That's what happened to Superboy. Superboy is the Great Saiyaman now, and Damian is still like a 13, 14-year-old short kid in junior high. You can't really bring back the Super Sons unless there's a way to make Superboy a Superboy again. And the reason why they were aging up Jonathan is so they could turn him into Superman. How they said he aged as he went on away from Earth, and it took light years for him to get back, and he aged or something like that. That's a Bendis thing. After Dan stopped doing the Superman books, I kind of stopped reading the Superman stuff. I read one issue that Bendis did, and he was trying to break up Lois and Superman. I was like, nope, I'm done. Nope, not reading this. Not reading this. Why use John as a teenager when they already have Connor Kent, who's a teenager? Because Connor Kent is in the Titans, Young Justice books, which may or may not be connected to something. It's possible that Tim Drake the Duck is not Tim Drake the Duck in regular DC continuity. I don't know. I thought that was like a Walmart special that Bendis is doing. I mean, the books have been pretty good until he got turned into a duck! A duck! Quackman returns. I haven't even seen Stephanie anymore. Like, Stephanie and Tim were going to be together, and, you know, I think he was going to elope with her or something, and she's just gone from DC. That's also a Dan Dido thing. He hates legacy characters. Stephanie is a legacy character. She made the Robin books pop. Tim Drake, as much as I love Tim is better paired up with Stephanie in the books because their dynamic is fun to read. They work well together, but when you separate them, they're not really interesting anymore. You know what I mean? It's like my wife and I. Together, K-Wing's Let's Plays is something that the O1 channel can never do. Apart, it's, well, kind of the state that it's in. We're amazing together, not so much apart. Same thing can be said for Tim and Steph. He needs that. She needs that. And the stories, when they're together, are just amazing. You could even argue, well, I mean, Tim Drake's solo books in the 90s, no. Steph was a key player for pretty much the entire run of the books. She was always there in some capacity. You could feel her presence because she was alive in that universe. Even when she became Batgirl and he became Red Robin, they still had interesting interaction between each other. Even though they both grew up and they weren't together, essentially, they were still together in the books every once in a while. And those books always sold more than solo adventures without those characters. That's just a fact. Justice League War was good, but it wasn't as good as Flashpoint, or Under the Red Hood, or the Wonder Woman movie. They even tried to do a reboot of the Wonder Woman film from 2009 last year. At least I think that Wonder Woman movie already came out. I don't remember. They were rebooting Wonder Woman's origin for the samey New 52 animated universe, and then it just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. I don't know if it released with a whimper or if it's coming out this year. I don't remember. Wonder Woman Bloodlines. Yeah, it did come out. See, nobody's talking about it because it doesn't matter. It doesn't have the same impact as the really good Wonder Woman animated movie. It just kind of came out and then died with a whimper. I don't even remember any of my friends talking about the movie at all. Like, you should check out Wonder Woman Bloodlines. It's good. Everything I heard about Bloodlines was, it was okay. It's a rental, maybe. I even asked them, I said, hey, is this new Wonder Woman movie as good as the Wonder Woman movie from '09? And even contacts that I have were kind of like, define good. And as soon as they said that, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, is this as bad as Bad Blood? Is this like a Hush thing? Is this a Killing Joke thing? What, and it was just okay from what I hear. I don't really have any interest in watching it because it's just kind of The Suicide Squad movie was really good. The animated one. No, both animated Wonder Womans are not in the same continuity. Wonder Woman Bloodlines is New 52 animated films. Wonder Woman is pre-Flashpoint animated movies. I miss my movie reviews too, but they got copyright claimed. I have faith in James Tynion. He's a pretty good writer, and his Bat books are great so far. I'm thinking about picking up James' run because I really liked his Detective Comics stuff, and the fact that he's going to incorporate, I heard, the Catwoman pregnancy into his books. Like, it's not just going to be a Tom King thing. At least that's what the rumor is, because before, the Bat-Cat books were supposed to be a continuation of Tom King's run, but it's not the canon Batman stuff. And before, I told you guys when they announced the pregnancy that whatever Tom King says is canon, Dan would be like, okay, but Dan's gone now. And Tom King is just starting to release his Batman Catwoman run. I believe this month. End of the month is when that first book comes out. Tom King doesn't have a yes man anymore. He has like an editor. I think that's what my problem with Dan was too. Dan actually started as an editor. Did you guys know that? And you know what an editor's job is, right? It's to go over your work and tell you what sticks and what doesn't. And Dan didn't really do that anymore. And the people that he hired to do that, he hired a lot of editors from Marvel, from the bad Marvel years. The crazies. And the crazies take out the good and put in the bad. The crazies were responsible for Rick Grayson and Nightwing getting shot. And Alfred being dead. Tom King, I honestly believe him when he says he didn't want to kill Alfred. He loves Alfred. Alfred is a very important character to Batman. But Dan and DC said, no, why does Alfred need to come back? Kill him. Kill him. Kill Alfred. It's fine. Now I sound like Seinfeld. I'm Dan Dido. Just kill Alfred. It's fine. Well, I mean, Dido doesn't hate love. He just got married, guys. He's at a retiring age. I'm not dissing the guy's personal life. When I was working for a publication, and Dido was around, I didn't interview him because I professionally hate the guy's guts. Like, in a professional capacity. I don't hate him as a human being. I don't like him as a CEO or whatever you want to say. When he was doing interviews about different stuff, and he was talking about why his reasoning is for not liking legacy characters, which I thought was the dumbest reason ever. Have you guys ever heard this one? Because he says it a lot, or did in his interviews. The reason why Dan DIDIO did not like legacy characters is because they aged iconic characters. That's it. He did not like that these characters were getting older. But what he doesn't understand is the people that are buying the books are not kids, not even teenagers. Most of the people that are buying comics today, or at least 10 years ago, people in their 30s and their 40s. The pull listers were not college kids, were not kids. They were people in their 30s, mid-30s, and their 40s. And they're not doing that anymore. And I will say this until my dying day, but the activists, the blue check marks on Twitter, they don't buy comics. They get comics sent to them to review, but they don't support the industry. They don't care. They'll jump from one controversy to the next because they're NPCs. They have no intelligent thought between their selves. They just echo whatever, the other is saying. And they will fight you to the death if you have a different opinion than them. On Twitter or wherever they hang out. Reset Era and some of these other places. No intelligent thought between the two of them. Just the same thought. Echoed. Endlessly. And if you disagree with them, then you're labeled a brown shirt from World War II. Even if you're not. Even if you're Jewish, they'll call you a brown shirt. That's how tolerant these people are. That's how tolerant their comics pros are at DC and Marvel. The only comic pros that I've respected the past 5 years are people at Boom Studios that write Power Rangers. I've met some of those guys. They're really chill, down-to-earth people. And they love the Power Rangers. And it shows. I challenge you guys watching to pick up the new Necessary Evil Power Rangers books with the White Ranger and the Omega Rangers. Very good reads. Incredible reads. Incredible love and respect for the characters. What is a brown shirt from World War II? Figure it out. Dini is coming back to DC Comics, but he doesn't have seniority. And it wasn't Dan who brought Dini back. It was some other people at DC. Dan wanted to bring in another very controversial comic book pro who is always causing a stir on Twitter, fighting with more people. At one point, I'm going to throw another name out there that people probably won't know who this person is, but maybe you will. How many of you guys know a individual named Mark Waid? Or know that name? Have heard that name? Okay, well, apparently some of the people that Dan's dream team consist of Bendis, Gal Simone, Zoe Quinn, Wade, and a few others. He didn't get Wade. He was probably going to bring Mark Waid in. And a few others that are very controversial that I don't want to name because they're still causing issues on Twitter and they constantly attack their fan base. They're very, very toxic people. But Dan was going to bring in people that he thought are talented, but at the same time, they rock the boat. And they cause talented people to leave. Zoe Quinn is at DC. You can thank Dan and Gal Simone for Zoe Quinn, the murderer, being at DC Comics, writing Bat books, which I have not supported any of her books. I call her a murderer because she led to the death of a very fragile person who was a victim of cancel culture. Indie game developer. So I have not supported any of her work, and a lot of people actually haven't bought a lot of her Bat books either. She is one of the lowest receptions in terms of sold books at DC currently for the past year and a half. So a lot of people, let their convictions guide them, and they haven't supported this woman, who should be under a criminal investigation. She's a horrible writer, and she's a horrible human being. Belongs behind bars, yeah. My paper shredder supports her work. Oh, that's a good one. Oh my gosh. Who do you think should play Harley in the Robert Pattinson Batman movie? I don't know. That's a good one. That's a boom. That's one of those, oh, snap type thing. Yeah, but Jim Lee and Goeff Johns weren't responsible for hiring that person. Dan brought in a lot of his friends or people that he enjoyed their work of in the past. What Dan didn't understand is these people change. While Dan is a villain when it comes to legacy characters, I have never, and I don't like using this term, but there's really no term that describes these crazy people that are left center or far left, other than SJW or NPC. I don't believe that Dan DIDIO was one of those people. I think that he made a lot of bad decisions, but the way that he treats fans of comics and the movies with respect, and he was never, I never saw him at a convention alienate or make fun of people on Twitter that didn't agree with him. The man was a class act in that respect. He had a mission to destroy legacy characters, and I never liked that about him, because I think his reasoning was stupid. But he was one of the few CEOs of a major comic book company that were not picking a fight with the people that bought his books. He wasn't calling them incels. He wasn't calling them brown shirts. He wasn't saying that men are the problem of the industry. He did none of that. He was a dingbat with some things, but that part about his character I deeply respect. And if Bendis took his job just for, devil's advocate here, then you would have someone crazy at DC who would be worse than Dan. But Bendis doesn't completely hate legacy characters. He just... how do I put this? Dan DIDIO likes to kill legacies. Bendis... he ruins them too, but it's not unsalvageable. Like, there could be ways that you could write, like a new writer could fix Superboy back to his real age. He could repair the marriage of Superman and Lois. Bendis doesn't do love well. I think that's part of the reason why he made Lois and Superman kind of estranged, is because he doesn't understand that type of love. For whatever reason, Dan Jargon, he must be like the greatest husband ever, because his love story stuff is top-notch when he's given the chance. He did an amazing thing with an older couple, a couple who had kids in comics. That's usually, when a couple gets married in comics in the modern age, it's a bad thing, because you don't know how to write those characters. When some people got a hold of Spider-Man and Mary Jane's marriage, they sold it to the devil, because their reasoning was, married couples are lame. Married couples aren't a thing. Nobody stays married for more than 5 years. I'm here to tell you, I'm going on 14 years of marriage. 14 years. That's more than most celebrities. Like Hollywooders. There are people that stay married their entire lives. There are people that get divorces, but there are also a big group of people that are still married. You just don't hear about them because it's not really newsworthy. It's more fun to talk about a couple that breaks up than a couple that's celebrating 50 years together. You know what I mean? It doesn't make interesting news. We all hate One More Day. Yeah, I know. I might be wrong. It might be 15 years. I don't know. We've always gone by the whole YouTube thing. YouTube started in 2005. We got married in 2006. So if YouTube is celebrating 15 years, that means this June is 14 years of marriage for us. Pretty sure. It needs to be in more stories. My grandparents made 60 years together before my grandfather passed away. That's my goal for marriage. Like, personally, is I want to make 65 or 70 years, if possible. I love that woman to death. She's crazy. She's fun. She is the Babs to my Nightwing, my Stephanie to my Tim Drake, you know? And she challenges me. She's the one. Without her, I'd probably become a crazy drama channel. I'd become a very dark individual. She's kind of like, even though I'm a night person and I don't like sunlight, I don't mind her sunlight. You know what I mean? I don't avoid it. Yes, I saw the Batsuit, guys. I'll talk about it tomorrow. We work at it every day. Like, marriage is a commitment. It's something that you both invest into. And that's what I got reading the Superman books. I think the reason why I was so interested in the Superman books when Dan Jargon was doing it is because it was sort of relatable, even though we didn't have kids, but their relationship was always at the forefront. Like, Superman stopped being super, sort of, because there was already a Superman on this Earth. You know, back during the New 52 when he popped up. And it led to DC Rebirth when New 52 Superman died. Sort of. Yeah, mostly he died. Or fused back into regular Superman. I don't know. I never really understood that. But again, I would wish Dan a new job somewhere else, but not in a way that he could mess with legacy characters anymore, because I don't think that's a good for anybody, honestly. I don't think that's good. I don't know if Dan Jargon's... Since Dan is gone, I can talk about, if some of you guys missed the beginning of the stream, what does this mean for DC Comics with Dan DIDIO gone from an executive decision level? Well, it means a lot of the bad ideas are probably going to be scrapped. A lot of the scary things that I think AT&T was concerned about, because you have to remember, they own Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers has not been very profitable for them. And somebody at AT&T got smart, is my reasoning. And I never like bringing up politics, but AT&T is a very far left group. But like I said, there's another group of people that are known as SJWs and NPCs that take that philosophy to an even further extreme, where almost someone with leftist ideology is viewed as a conservative. Like, these people on Twitter, like that group of people, they would eat the other person alive like a cannibal. So AT&T is not that way. Yes, they can be a little extreme with some things, but they're not full blown. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but, and I hate this term, I wish there was a word that really befitted these crazies, but NPC is the only real one that describes them mostly. But with those groups, with those people, if you don't fall in line with everything they believe or say about comics, about video games, if you stand up to one tiny little thing, say you have no problem with anime fan service, and they say anime is a misogynist nightmare, and they're all echoing the same thing, and you're in their group, but one day you go to Twitter and you're like, I watched Rise of the Shield Hero. Wasn't that bad. They will eat you alive. And they do. Every day. If you don't agree with every single thing they believe, they will come after you just as hard as their enemies. It's insane. I've never witnessed that in this industry. I was a game journalist when people could have different opinions and still be friends. There have been people written out of the comic book industry because of these whack jobs. And in my personal mindset, AT&T, even though they're speaking with their wallet, they're done. That doesn't mean they're going to fold up DC Comics because I know that they see potential. I think this is going to be the last hurrah for DC to course correct. I think Dan leaving is because he couldn't get his way. I don't think it's because, I don't like what they're going to do with the future of DC Comics. No. He had a future plotted out, and that plot was DC 5G. That was Luke Fox as Batman. Not Nightwing, not Red Hood, not Damian. Luke Fox, a character who doesn't even have a successful single issue. He's never maintained a solo book for longer than 13 to 14 issues. He's mostly been used as a team-up character. That's not to say that someone can't write the character well. I'd love to take a stab at it. I think I could do Luke justice. It's the name, right? We both have the same name. I could make Iron Man Batman a successful book series. It's not hard. You just have to have a love and appreciation for the character, and you have to know the character. You have to know their strengths and weaknesses. You know? And they have to have a successful book. Did you know most of the people at Marvel and DC that they brought in to write have never really written comic books before? So to say that I don't have experience to go in and write a comic, it doesn't work anymore. I'm more than qualified. I might be overqualified to write DC Comics. The people that they've got off the street are just mostly people with blue check marks. I'm not lying either. It's when I heard that kind of stuff, I was like, so you're bringing in somebody who's never written a comic before for Marvel to write for this character. What has she done before? She did a commercial. Okay, I guess she wrote for a commercial. That means she can write comics. No. Same thing with DC. Zoe Quinn is a horrible writer. And yet they brought her in, you know? And Bendis used to be very good, but Bendis has lost his touch. You know? Bendis did great things with Spider-Man. I'm not going to knock that. The man did brilliant things with Spider-Man. He did his best to, treat the character well, and he gave us Miles Morales, correct? He's the man who gave us Miles, I think. Zoe's writing for DC. And if you don't like her book, she's going to say that you're victimizing her or you hate women or whatever. Even if she's a horrible writer, you can't say that. Because you're a misogynist if you say that. Common sense is bad. But back to the whole AT&T thing. I used to think it was strange that Jude Winnick, a guy who's been at Marvel for 15 years now, since departing DC Comics, is now a free agent. Like, when did he left Marvel at the start of this year, right? I'm pretty sure. You guys know Marvel more than I did. No, Jude was in an executive level at Marvel. He was at Marvel Television. Pretty sure. I remember him. Oh, sorry. Jeff Loeb's. I'm thinking Jeff Loeb. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Jeff. Yeah. I always get Jude and Jeff confused because they both have J names. It's a dyslexic thing. They also both did a lot of stuff with different DC characters around the same time. Long Halloween, Under the Red Hood, that kind of stuff. So, as a dyslexic, when J names, it's, they kind of get identity swiped a little bit for me. They were very popular around the same time. And they both have done things at DC Television and DC Comics. So, I don't know where Jude Winnick is anymore. I thought he was coming back to DC as well, last I heard. We're never going to speak of that story. We're never going to speak of it. But anyway, that one guy left Marvel, right? Around the same time that all this is happening. And he understands how to use these characters well. So in my mind, this could all be timing related, you know? It really could. Man, I feel like such an idiot confusing Jude with Jeff. Why did you say that? What did you say? I like to see Batman in BioShock. Ooh! He brought it up! He brought it up! Oh! Oh, no, 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 no. We don't speak of that Spider-Man series. Ever. So Marvel is better than DC in comics right now, too? Not in sales. I mean, you have to understand that the comic book industry... Marvel is doing its best to kind of slowly purge its tumor, so to speak. DC has been letting their tumor grow to cancerous levels. It wasn't that bad yet, but the DC 5G would have been kind of like do or die for this type of philosophy. Like this idea of like appeasing all these people that say Batman needs to be black or Superman needs to be gay and, Wonder Woman needs to be fat. That type of stuff. That was their master plan, so to speak. And because Superman is in a committed relationship with his wife, you have to make a new Superman. And since, Bruce Wayne is now with Catwoman and Dick Grayson has his own issues, it'd be very easy to say, okay, Dick Grayson can't be Batman when Batman dies, so who's it going to be? Tim Drake is in another universe. We can't get him. Jason Todd is too insane. Can't be him. Batwoman is a woman. She can't be Batman, even though she basically is Batman. Who are you going to get? Luke Fox. Duke's too young. I think Duke is too young. Did Duke go through like a massive age change, or is he still a teenager? I haven't really seen much of Duke these days. Aside from the Outsider book stuff. So, I mean, yeah, it'd be Luke Fox. Logically. Stop changing our characters, just make one. Duke's still a kid. I thought so. Yeah. Yeah, Jeff Loeb. Yeah, his son is... That's why he did Batman so well, though, is because he had a lot of tragedy. And sometimes a best way to go over the horrible things that happen to you is to use your pain for something creative. Look at me. I have horrible medical conditions. I was given really bad... what's the word am I looking for? Oh, yeah, I've been told I was going to die several times with my breathing-related illness. So I used kind of that darkness for my YouTube stuff, my Batman videos, over the past 10 years. 10 years later, I'm still here, but I live with that fear every day that I'm just going to stop breathing because of, that illness. It never goes away. Some days are better than others. No cure. Nothing I can do. I could see that as being fuel for me to write something really good, to channel that bleak aspect of my soul and use it to push myself forward. But in Leob's case, I don't know, it might have backfired a little bit because shortly after that he left DC Comics, if I'm not mistaken. Jude Winnick, I thought he was writing children's books, actually. He wasn't the Marvel guy. I feel like a complete idiot for confusing those two. But they both look the same. Have you seen those guys in pictures? They're both bald. They're both kind of like middle-aged now. It's always hard for me to distinguish the two of them. Hey, what's going on, Unsane Bat? Damian Wayne is really cool and deceased. I agree. But it's very interesting that, you know, he's gone from Marvel, and now Dido is gone. But, I mean, there's a couple other people that they could do. I mean, it all depends what AT&T wants to do. I mean, the ball's in their court. But I honestly believe that they cleaned house a little bit. And I hope Zoe Quinn is next. I really do. I don't want to get rid of Bendis just yet. But maybe I do. I think that if Bendis has someone who will actually be an editor to him and not just let him do whatever you want. The problem of having friends in high places is you can pretty much get away with murder in Zoe Quinn's case. Because there's no one there to give you the editing that you need. You know? Editors, their job is supposed to be like, okay, this works, this doesn't, why don't you try this? And for DC, I'm just going to be honest, there hasn't been that for a long time. And they've made a lot of decisions that they never would have made 20 years ago. You know what I mean? A lot of crazy decisions, if I'm being completely honest. Get rid of Bendis. Stream isn't loading because of your Wi-Fi. Oh, noes. Bendis is next. I don't know. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. What did you think about Doomsday Clock? I thought that was good. That was a Goeff Johns book. Yeah, I mean, personally, guys, I really don't want to make a video on the whole Ben Affleck thing. I believe that was a private thing. It makes a lot of sense, but I don't want to montanize something like that. I have family members who struggle with being an alcoholic. I have a relative that drank themselves to death when I was a kid. So, I mean, if Ben really believes that was a driving factor, or his friends were concerned that his alcoholism was getting that extreme, I really don't want to talk about it. I don't think that's very good for Ben. Hollywood loves to destroy people and use things that could either help their career or hurt their career. He might get some sympathy about this, but at the same time, he's obviously pretty upset that he even mentioned this. I say that we just leave the man alone. We wish him the best, and we hope that he appears as Batman again in some type of Black Label when he's feeling much better. But, yeah, I'm glad that he got the help that he needed, and I still think the guy is an incredibly talented Oscar-winning actor, and for me, he will always be Batman. I'm trying to give Robert the benefit of the doubt, but after seeing a synopsis of what his script was going to be, and the fact that it was good, and Kevin Smith liked it, and it wasn't Warner Brothers that said no, all that stuff was just because Ben walked away from his, because of his health. I respect that, I do. But I don't want to make a video about it monetizing it, because I don't think that's right. Just like if I kick the bucket, I don't want a bunch of YouTubers talking about me unless they're going to give the proceeds to my wife. That's just how I feel about that kind of stuff. There's a gas leak next door. It smells like Zoe Quinn's books. Jacob, open the window, man. I lived in an apartment that had a gas leak. It almost killed me. Even natural gas can kill you if you're like in a closed off environment. I told you guys that story, right? The landlord made us put the air conditioner in the back of the house because he didn't want it in the front. So when Amber and I were first married, our crummy apartment, which was basically in the ghetto, the air conditioner over time put out the pilot light in our, gas stove. And thank God Amber and I were working so many jobs, we were only home to sleep like 5 hours a day or whatever, because we probably would have been asphyxiated from the natural gas. But if it was possible to sue that landlord, I would, because if I would have been able to put my air conditioner in the front of the house, I mean, who knows? We probably would still be living there. But maybe I owe my whole YouTube career to that guy, because I was in between jobs when that happened. And And I turned to YouTube after my last job that I got. Right when that gas leak happened, I was working as a teacher's aide at a school. And, you know, that was my last job before I really dug my heels into game journalism. Because I was just doing it passively from 04 until the time I got married. And then I really went hardcore with it. So, I, you know, as much as that guy's a jerk, I kind of owe my current way of life to that incident. Who knows? Speaking of Clone Wars, gonna bounce. No worries. And now we're gonna watch the chat drop down to 100 people. What rumor true, Sonic? Can you elaborate? K-Wing, would you believe I could write a better Batman story? Yeah, anybody can, as long as they're invested into the story and the characters and they know what they're doing. K-Wing, do you think Bendis DC would do One More Day Superman? They would have. I think Mark Waid is a terrible editor. I think he's worse than Dan and Joe. No. I mean, with Dan gone, Michael, there's no way that there can be a Superman One More Day. In fact, I honestly didn't think course correction was very popular. Like, with DC, I didn't think it would work. Because you guys remember... I can tell you when the Nightwing books changed dramatically. In one issue, Nightwing was supposed to be fighting some type of flame demon or something, and he and Batgirl were going to work together. But he was going to be working with the Nightwings, fighting like this flame creature. And then Dan Jargon came in, and the story completely changed. It kind of left on a cliffhanger, and it was still flame related, but it was like a pyro character instead of like this metahuman threat. So it completely changed. And then the story changed even further when they introduced the Court of Owls. So, I mean, it's very possible that they can fix things. They have time. That means they're going to have to scrap the 5G thing. They could do a true DC Rebirth, though. Because there are people that like DC Rebirth. And I was nervous when they dropped the DC Rebirth name. Have you guys noticed, like, for the past year and a half, it hasn't said DC Rebirth anymore. It said DC Universe. That was a very troubling sign for me about what was to come. Oh yeah, DC Comics were going to get worse than the New 52. They were going to be DC 5G. Tim Drake the Duck is because of Bendis and Dan Dido gave the okay to change Robin into Red Robin into a duck. Mark Waid is in the middle of a lawsuit right now. He did some pretty bad thing. He attacked another comic book agency, and he is in some serious legal trouble. He was a great writer, but he's not a good human being. He tried to prevent... He did some torrents... I believe the term is called torrents interference between a couple companies in publishing a comic book. And he wielded his power in the industry to do some illegal things. So, very good writer, crummy human. And he did this back in 2018, and he's been in court off and on for a couple years. Tim just named himself after a duck. Yeah, Tim just did that on his own. Will Tim Drake still be a duck? I don't know. What is 5G? 5G was supposed to be the new DC Comics after a crisis that was supposed to happen this fall. I can't play the game and talk to you guys at the same time. There's like a chat going. So that's kind of why I just have the game going. Also, I don't even know if there's any batteries in my controller, to be honest. Yeah, see? Look at that. I'm psychic. I'm psychic, y'all. Oh my gosh. K-Wing, will DC bring Alfred back to life? I don't know. Is Batman definitely not going to die now? I don't know. It depends who they bring in. Yeah, okay, so this person has great. I'll just read their comment. DC 5G was another DC Comics reboot that would have killed off legacy characters like... No, well, legacy characters aren't Batman and Superman. They are icons. They're icons. Legacy characters are sidekicks. Think like Dick Grayson, Wally West, Donna Troy, Titans. Those are legacy characters. Characters that grew out of their legacy and forged their own, identities. Like, they started as sidekicks, but they became something more. So, but for the most part, you're correct. That's a great explanation, except for that. You were really, 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 really close. Really close with that, my friend. So yeah, just to sum up for him, DC 5G was this new reboot where the Trinity was going to die, and not everyone thinks this, but there are people on Twitter with blue check marks who've been saying for years that Batman needs to be black, Wonder Woman needs to be fat, and Superman needs to be gay. So, DC was going to listen to the people that don't buy comics and go with what they believe is what the public at large wanted, which is not what the public wanted. The public likes Lois and Clark and Baby Jonathan. The public likes Bruce Wayne as Batman, and the public loves Diana as Wonder Woman. But companies listen to these people on Reset Era and Twitter and view that as the new norm, or what they want to be the norm. If you think differently of what they view as the norm, then you are part of the problem, and they don't care about you. So they were going to reboot everything. Now, the rumor that's going around within the past 4 hours today is that AT&T did not know about DC 5G. They were not told. Because their plan is they want to build up a lot of these characters that are celebrating 80 years of existence, like Robin and Joker and Catwoman. These are very valuable IPs for them. Not just in the movies and on television, but as comic books and video games as well. If you were to kill these characters that they are going to be making a lot of money off of in the next couple years, that makes no sense to replace them right now. So, the rumor is, which I cannot confirm this yet because there's so much happening after Dan DIDIO stepped down literally 4 or 5 hours ago. There's so much information that's flooding my way that I can't discern if it's true or false. Because there are people in the SJW crowd or the NPCs that are saying it's because of this, and then there are people on one side that are saying no, it's this way, and then you have people who cover comic books for a living saying no, it's this way. So I'm getting 3 things of information thrown at me in text like crazy about what the situation really is. He got fired, he stepped down, he's going to be replaced, his job is being restructured. And restructured is not good because then that means there'll be no co-publisher. It'll just be Jim Lee or whoever AT&T appoints. It won't be a partnership. So, I mean, there's lots of information coming my way, and it's hard for me to pick what's real and what isn't. You know what I mean? Because some people are happy about this, some people are freaking out. So, yeah. Yeah, K-Wing's going crazy, because I'm being overloaded with information, so it's hard for me to figure out what's going on anymore. Yeah, if you try to switch a character's race to write comic books, then you're bad at writing books. I agree. One of my favorite writers, I don't know if you guys will even know who this gentleman is, but how many of you guys love Justice League? Justice League was successful as a TV series because of a man named Dwayne McDuffie. Dwayne McDuffie understood characters and how to write and make characters better and more human, how to make them relatable. He is the main reason Justice League was successful. He gave us a new origin story for Jon Stewart. He gave us more interesting relationships between Hawkgirl and Jon Stewart. He he teased the idea of Wonder Woman and Batman, which was never really a possibility before because they explored that in the comics and it didn't work. But Dwayne made you tune in every week because you didn't know what was going to go on with Wonder Bat. The man was a genius when it came to characterization. You know? He also believed that it was important to create new identities for characters of different races. Okay, I'm going to say a superhero, and some of you are probably going to freak out because you'll have no idea what I'm talking about. But when... It's okay to have diversity in comic books, but it's more important that those diverse characters are given their own identity. And this man, Dwayne McDuffie, who I respected so much in both the comic book world and television, created his own heroes, such as Static Shock. So he is the father of Static Shock, among other things. You know? And he proved that a brand new character, who just had a comic book for a couple years, mind you, got a brand new cartoon show and became mainstream. Like, I can't snap my fingers, but imagine me snapping my fingers, please. It's one thing I can't do. Amazing, powerful voice. Can't snap fingers to save my life. And that was in a relatively short time span. So he went from Static Shock, the TV show, to Justice League. And that was a huge leap for him. And he took the same ideas that he did with his Static Shock property and used that with Justice League. That's the kind of people that you need running DC, but unfortunately, Dwayne has been gone for so many years. And when he left this Mortal Coil, Justice League Unlimited suffered. Ben 10 suffered. He was the writer behind Ben 10. Wasn't the same. I'm going to get all mopey. But I really respected that guy. He was really cool. If anybody could have ran DC Comics in its time of need right now, it would have been Dwayne. I think Dwayne could have done so many amazing things. But, you know, Dwayne's been in heaven a long time, so. It still gives me hope for other people like Goeff Johns and things like that. Yeah, that's what happened to Ben 10. That's why Ben 10 sucked, is the big guy behind it wasn't behind it anymore. I'm gonna get teary-eyed. I really loved Justice League and Ben 10 so much. It was so good. And the Static Shock show was so fun. I'm not gonna rap or anything like that because then I'll lose followers, but it was, you know, it sent a shock through my system, and it was I was so excited to learn it was a brand new superhero. I had no idea. I didn't know. You know, I thought it was a made-up character for television. I didn't know that Static has his own thing. And then he was merged into DC Comics, and he's been there for quite some time. I think Static still has a book, doesn't he? Static still around? The reason why... No, Dwayne did Alien Force. He passed away during Ben 10 Ultimate Alien or something. I loved Alien Force so much. Like, when they aged the characters, that time skip, that's when Amber and I became fans of Ben 10, was Alien Force. He wasn't around for the next part of that series, and it showed. I recently found out Static has been a part of DC. But, I mean, Dan's whole reason for not liking legacy characters, which I just feel like an echo chamber right now, is because he just doesn't like legacy characters because it ages the icons. It ages Batman. It ages Superman, and it ages Wonder Woman. And in his mindset, because he grew up with these characters when they were not with sidekicks, there's a whole psychological reason behind his reasoning. Because he didn't grow up with them. Robin wasn't with Batman when he was reading Batman books. Batman was solo. Superman didn't have the Superman family anymore. He was solo. You know? This is a guy who grew up reading Batman comics in the late 60s and early 70s. Sure, he saw Adam West on TV, but Robin, for him, was a joke. That's it. That's why. And once he got into power, he was like, you know, I think there are people in the industry and in the world today that also hate Robin. They hate Nightwing. They don't like Wally West. You know, we brought back Barry Allen. Why do we need Wally West? Look at how well the Flash comics are doing. Flash comics were interesting because you brought back Barry Allen after almost 30 years. Of course people are going to be buying the books like crazy. But when it comes down to it, people love Wally more than Barry. I just think that Dan didn't get that. Of all the characters that he screwed with, I never understood why he did what he did to Wally West. Because he grew up with Wally West as the Flash. And in his own twisted mind, he was actually a fan of Nightwing in the 80s. He was. But for whatever reason, he wanted to kill Nightwing. Because he didn't like the direction that the character was going. So he loved the character so much, he wanted to kill him. You know? All they needed to do was just bring in some talented people to write Nightwing, and we really didn't have that after Chuck Dixon left. It took Nightwing to become Batman for Dan to go, oh, okay. But then he was like, nah, we're going to reboot it with the New 52. We've done everything we can with Flashpoint, you know. There's no going back. Everything's going to be fresh. It's going to be different. It's going to be new. I think that DC lost a lot of fans when they said that all the rich history that's happened with the New 52 never happened. I think that's when a lot of people started to turn against Dan, because he did some pretty cool stuff with Flashpoint. A lot of those crazy ideas. Flashpoint is Dan going crazy with ideas, bouncing back and forth between the Flashpoint writers and DC's executive people. Because every crazy thing Dan's wanted to do is in Flashpoint. You can tell. When you look at the different crises over the years in DC Comics, go back and look at Flashpoint and see some of those crazy things that happened, and then read the current crises, and you can see Dan's hands all over it. You know? He was playing with the jigsaw puzzle, and you could tell. But eventually that puzzle just had too many pieces missing from it, and it just didn't work. So like I said, I don't know if AT&T is responsible for giving Dan the boot, or if he just was trying to hold on really strongly to his ideals about DC 5G, or if he just was like, you know what? I'm just going to retire. This isn't a bad thing. I just got married. You know, people are going to freak out, and controversy is good for the industry to some respects. But at the same time, you know, there could be some truth to him being fired, or some other things. The reason why I even wrote this video being fired is because, like, one thing going around the circle of the industry is that, how do I phrase this? A couple months ago, not even a couple months ago, 3 weeks ago, Dan was talking about the future of DC Comics, and nowhere did he mention that he was going to be distancing himself from DC. Like, in his mind, he loves DC Comics. He had big plans. He was the guy responsible for the next crisis. Like, that was on his, you know, storyboard thing. That was his idea, listening to the Twitterites for Luke Fox's Batman and Fat Wonder Woman and, you know, different preferences for Superman. That was all Dan's, you know, ideas. His, I wouldn't really call them ideas. It's more like what he thinks that modern society wanted. And he was going to do it no matter what. It was going to be his legacy. as much as the New 52 was his legacy. People are giving him credit for DC Rebirth, but Rebirth is Geoff Johns and Jim Lee's baby. That was their idea. They were trying to frantically figure out how they could fix DC, and they succeeded for a while. And then DC Rebirth died after Doomsday Clock, and Heroes in Crisis was the end of DC Rebirth. And it's been known as DC Universe ever since. Go and look at your books right now. If you have a DC Rebirth issue, look at the top where it says DC Rebirth, and now look at a current DC issue from like the past year and a half. It says DC Universe. It doesn't say DC Rebirth anymore, because DC Rebirth is dead. That's right, soccer, or sorcerer. Is it sorcerer or soccer? Stop saying quack! Yeah, there's no source material for Star Wars, yet there's thousands of Legends books. I know, I love Kathleen Kennedy's reasonings with that. It's like, you're a moron. And we don't know what to do with Star Wars. It's not like we have a library of information. Oh, wait! Yes, we do! I just never thought I would see a comic book writer that is so old come back. And yes, I'm talking about Dini and Dan Jargon. These guys are legends, and both are back at DC currently. That's crazy to me. I am so excited for Dini's run with DC Comics like very soon, because he doesn't have to bounce ideas back and forth with Dan DIDIO, which I think part of the reason why, this is just speculation, but there were certain people that Dini did not like at DC, and that's why he went to Marvel all those years ago. There were a lot of things that he wanted to do with DC Comics that he wasn't allowed to. Some people said yes to them, but he got a big fat no from somebody in charge. And that person I don't think was Jim Lee. So Dini, like the creator of Deadpool, has to be through the roof. I haven't checked Dini's Twitter, but I don't think he would be celebrating Dan's departure. Because he would probably say things like, Dan really was helpful for us with Justice League. And, you know, he was. Both him and Jim Lee did some really great things with the Justice League cartoon show. In terms of marketing and, you know, all that other stuff. But I think it's a good time to just walk away. And I'm pretty sure that, you know, title aside for this video, I think that it was just time in Dan's life to step aside. I believe that the DC 5G thing was killed by AT&T. I don't think we're going to hear about it anymore. I hope not. The only thing you'll hear about is like Twitterites, like the NPC people going crazy about like not getting what the public really wants with Luke Fox's Batman, and you know, different takes on Wonder Woman and Superman, and a fresh new take on the DC universe that will get them to buy comics, which they won't. They're activists. Activists don't buy jack. They just complain and stand on their soapbox yelling until they're blue in the face. They don't actually support things, aside from updating their Instagram holding a comic book that they might be borrowing from a friend, or a t-shirt they bought on Amazon or something like that. I believe there are different aspects to fandom. I'm not a gatekeeper, but I'm pretty sure that there's a difference between what are fans and what aren't. I know people don't like that analogy, but you can tell the difference between a fraud and someone who's legit, even if they're just a casual fan of something. I'm not saying you need to be hardcore and be like me and know every aspect of Batman. Good luck with that. I don't know every aspect of Batman, and I'm considered an expert by a lot of people. I can go all the way back to the 70s of Batman books. That's my limit. The Golden Age, I'm completely clueless. The Silver Age, I don't want to read because it's so goofy that it triggers me so much. Those books weren't made for my generation, so I'm sure as heck not going to read them. You know what I mean? So technically I can't be considered a Batman superfan because I only know Batman from the past 40 years. And I've only been alive for 36. I'm 37 now, aren't I? Shoot. 37 of them. Or am I 38? How old am I? Doesn't matter. Age is but a number. I'm 20-something. Probably. Shut up, Zero! So does this mean that Hope will come back? I don't know. What's said is I think the 5G could have worked with real takes. Luke Fox as a tech Batman, Silver Age Wonder Woman, and... No, they weren't... You don't know who Superman was going to be, do you? Superman was going to be Jonathan Kent. They just were going to pull a Iceman with him. You know what they did to Bobby Drake a couple years ago where they changed his preferences for coupling? They were going to do the same thing to John, even though John, as far as I know, he had a girl he had a crush on that was kind of like a Lana Lang type character. I don't think Bendis has done anything with her, but she was around for a couple years in Smallville. They went to school together. And he really, really liked her. But... according to what Twitter wanted, they were going to do the not Tim Drake, sorry. They were going to do the Iceman thing to Jonathan, and they were going to make him Superman. Yeah, that's part of the reason why Bendis was involved, exactly, because of what he did to Iceman. Yep. Yep. That's why people were worried. Did I like the Suicide Squad series by Adam Glass? I haven't really... I don't know them personally. I've talked to Comic Historian once. And that was back when I was at Maker Studios. So that was a long time ago. He mentioned something about a collab when I was doing Arkham stuff because he liked watching my Arkham Knight videos way back in the day. I still have the email somewhere, but I never followed up with it because when he reached out to me, I was moving from Boston to Philadelphia. So I never circled back with him. I have nothing against him, but he used to follow my Arkham stuff long time ago. As far as anybody else, I don't know anyone else. I'm on my own little YouTube island. In fact, I had a press agency reach out to me to do to work for like a company that works with YouTubers, and I've been racking my brain about who I could do collabs with because I haven't finished filling out their paperwork for them to be my agency or whatever, because I can't for the life of me think about who would want to work with me, because a lot of people hate me on YouTube and I don't like them, so I don't think it would be a good fit. I have nothing wrong with Comics Historian, and I've only talked to him once, but I don't even know if he uses the same email anymore. I don't know. 2015 was a long time ago, guys. That's 5 years ago. Might even be longer than that. But yeah, I'm racking my brain who I could work with. And I'm not going to say the people I don't get along with and the people that don't like me, because then that just creates drama, and I don't like doing that. But Dan Dido has his list of characters that he doesn't like. I have a mental list of people I know I don't get along with. I would try, though. I would actually act like an adult, but I don't think they can let go of old beef, personally. No, I'm not a class act. I hold a grudge. I can work with them and do my job, but no, I hold a grudge. Some of them are responsible for making me batty over the years because I thought we were friends and I was being used for contacts and for information and things like that. But I would play nice. Yeah, I got Caesared. K-Wing, are they still doing 5G? Not if AT&T has any say in it. That was Dan Dido's baby. That was his idea. Jim Lee would hardly ever bring it up at conventions. He said that there was a crisis coming and some changes happening, but he never really talked about it the way that Dido would tease. Like, a lot of things that... When he said that a lot of things that people have wanted to see for years we're going to do, and where a lot of these YouTube celebrities were being approached by people about DC's direction, how I found out about 5G is through the YouTube circuit, where you had, like, NPC YouTubers talking about how progressive DC Comics is going to become and things like that. They were the ones... I always thought it was just a rumor that we were going to get a black Batman and a fat Wonder Woman and, you know, fatter superheroes and diabetic superheroes and wheelchair all this weird stuff that just randomly would happen. It came from those people. At least that's what I was hoping. I thought it was all fake, and then I found out it was real. It was like, oh no. So, yeah. They reached out to those YouTubers to get them to promote that stuff. I don't know what's going to happen now, if they're going to continue to do it, because I'm pretty sure the direction is being steered away from the iceberg, and something new is going to happen. Something that people are going to be sticking around for. It's not really DC's fault. It's not... I mean, DC is more than just Dan Dido, but you have to remember that Jim Lee and Dido were a partnership. They were a duo that worked together. Jim Lee has been a part of DC Televisions as, like, their commander-in-chief now for going on a year and a half. He started his new job. And there was a big thing, I think it was last year or at the end of 2018, that he left DC Comics. He didn't leave it, but he left his responsibilities, or he couldn't do both. He was really needed at television. Jim Lee's handiwork can be found on the Season 2 of Titans and the Harley Quinn show, and... him and Goeff Johns did some stuff with the upcoming Stargirl. So, I mean, you know, you can kind of see his hand in things. I don't know who Red Letter Media is. I've been watching you since I was 9 in 2015. Is this the legendary Nightwing that helped get his wife into civilization? Oh my gosh, where have you been? I wouldn't say I'm legendary, I'm just old. The only reason I'm respected is I've been on YouTube as long as YouTube's existed. That's how I gained a reputation. I'm just an old man screaming at a cloud of 400 people on live streams once in a while. All I do is live stream, really. So can we get Oracle back? No, you're not going to get Oracle back. K-Wing, you make being on the autism spectrum so much better. Aw, thank you. K-Wing, is it weird that you're the same age as my parents? Yes! Wally might finally have redemption, yes. I heard Goeff Johns isn't working at DC Comics anymore. He has his own website where he works on DC Comics, like 3 Jokers. Goeff Johns left DC, kind of. He has, like... how did EVS explain this a while ago? He's just solely a writer now. Like, someone else has his job, but the owners of DC Comics still know Goeff Johns. So, I mean, if they want to appoint him, I wouldn't be shocked. There are a lot of people that want Goeff Johns to be the big guy. And, you know, he's kind of... Goeff Johns is involved with television shows like Stargirl is his baby because he rewrote Stargirl several years ago. So he was very instrumental in this TV show coming out very soon, I think. When does Stargirl debut? Is it like the spring or is it the fall? It's soon. So that's his baby. And he's mostly been writing like comic books because he loves to write. Goeff Johns is like one of those people that he could be president of a major comic book company, but he doesn't want to be. Because what his passion is writing. It'd be like if somebody told me I would be really good as a network CEO, but I like to make YouTube content. I can't do both. Personally, I love you guys. I love this channel. But my main income is K-Wing's Let's Plays, so I'm kind of like a Goeff Johns in that respect. I have this channel, and I have the other one, but where do I spend most of my time? What am I doing all the time? I'm doing the other channel that supports my income. I have to. I don't want to all the time. I love coming over here and talking about all kinds of random topics and, just randomly watching a bunch of cars drive down there and not doing anything. My PS4 controller is totally dead now, so the game's probably going to shut off soon. Because I can't even move Batman, I don't think. Let me try something. Come on. Oh, it moved! It moved! Did you see it? It moved! And it's dead again. I always know how to make you laugh, thank you. I wanted to be a comedian at one point in my life. I was just bad at telling jokes. I can always be young at heart. I look young. I'll always have that. Do I like The Simpsons? Oh, Super Sons? Yeah, I have most of the Super Sons. Favorite Batsuit? Keaton. I think. I love the Keaton suit. It's just so nostalgic for me. And if it wasn't for the Keaton suit, we wouldn't have, other black Batsuits. Was watching the Batman film in Glasgow today. I don't know what that is. Killing Joke all over again. K-Wing, would you bring back Super Sons if I was in charge of it? Yeah. Oh, I'm sure they're good guys, Omar. I just don't know them. I only really work with people I know really well, but maybe I should work with people I don't know very well so I don't get stabbed in the back anymore. What are your thoughts on the Superman Red Sun trailer? Looks good. Are you going to go see Wonder Woman 84? Yep. Already have my ticket. Oh, he's watching the new Batman being filmed. Oh, that is awesome. Stargirl is coming in the spring. That's awesome. Typing on phone. 13 years, Batman Show, New England. Who is EVS? He is a comic book pro that was at DC Comics from the 90s all the way until, I want to say 2018 or 2017 when he was people like Gal Simone and some other people got him out of the industry. And he started his own, I'm probably going to say this wrong, started his own comic, maybe a company that's, I guess it's considered like an indie thing, but I mean, the guy's a pro, so I can't really see how it'd be indie comics. But he has a YouTube channel. It's like Comic Arts something. I don't know. He was, if you guys really enjoyed the Green Lantern books from Green Lantern Rebirth with Goeff Johns, he was I think he's the artist. Yeah, he's the artist. He was the guy who did all the really cool art for the Hal Jordan Green Lantern books for Green Lantern Rebirth. And he also helped create the different lantern spectrums, the different colors of lanterns with Goeff Johns. So I mean, he was pretty big at DC, but he was run out of the industry because of his political beliefs. And a lot of people made a big deal about it on Twitter, sadly. So we don't live in an age now where you can have a different viewpoint and still have a job. You have to agree to the majority of what people think at your work environment. So that's sad. If I had to pick an words. If you had to pick an actor to play a live-action Punchline, who would you pick? Is Lucy Liu too old? Is she? She's probably really old. I only remember, I think Lucy Liu would be perfect because she can do all the martial arts and stuff. Is she too old? Oh, really? Come on. Lucy Liu is awesome. Man, I'm old. When I think, like, smoking Oriental lady, I think of Lucy Liu still. Because I remember her in Charlie's Angels, the good one. And some other martial arts movies she did. No, not Xena. I'm not thinking Xena. That's Lucy Lawless, I think. I'm getting my Lucys confused. Oh my gosh, I'm old. She's probably in her 40s. So she could still pull it off. I mean, Punchline isn't like a 20-something. Joker looks old now too, so that they could do it. Don't judge me. I don't know who Kelly Hu is. I don't know. I'm sorry. I only remember actors from the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. I just don't watch a lot of movies. She could pull it off. All right. So, yeah, that's all I really got, guys. This has been an amazing stream. I don't care if she's 51. She looks like she's 38. She could do it. Jackie Chan could still do martial arts, and the guy's pushing like 78, 80. Wait, how old is Jackie now? He's got to be 70. How old is Jackie Chan? Is he 70? He's got to be 70. Hang on. Jackie Chan. Nope, don't tell me. I'm looking it up. Jackie Chan, how old is he? Okay, he's 65. All right. Okay. Close to 70. He's still kicking butt. Nah, he's 65. Keanu Reeves, yeah. Oh, you guys are so much fun. So, I mean, the only thing that we can do now is we can't make fun of Dido anymore, guys. It's over. My inside joke for the past 10 years is gone. I'm gonna have to come up with someone else to make fun of. I'm kind of sad. The ride's over. I'm gonna miss him because he was the fuel for my fire for some time. I had a lot of interesting topics I could talk about because of his bad direction over the years, and now it's kind of like I'm the Joker and crime has no meaning anymore. Without Dan Dido, what's K-Wing? I'm just playing. Oh my gosh. I know, I have to let the legacy characters go. I just have to... I have to find a new target. Oh, if I go after Zoe Quinn, I mean, maybe something really bad could happen to me. I don't know. She's not really fun to pick fun at because she takes things way too seriously. R.I.P. Dido jokes, yeah. It's gone. And I like James Tinian, so I can't make fun of him. I could always hop on the Tom King train and make fun of Tom, but I do like some of Tom King's work, so I don't think he could replace Dido in my heart of scorn. So, Nightwing, you're in charge of the next 10 years of Batman video games. What are your new games? New games are not connected to Arkham, so I would have a clean slate. I would want to do the Court of Owls because that's popular, and the Court of Owls are big in comics again, so I'd go that route. I would bring in Scott Snyder as a consultant and writer for my game. My 10-year plan would be a Batman game first. Then I would do a second Batman game 2.5 to 3 years later as a continuation. Like, the Batman game, how I would get people to come back for the sequel is I would have it end on a cliffhanger. Like, I would do something that would make you have to come back whether you hated or loved the game to get a satisfying ending. I would leave it not open-ended. It would be continued. And I would use Hush as my villain for the second game. My next thing I would do is I would have a spin-off of a Nightwing game where he goes from Gotham to Bloodhaven and establishes himself there. I would do a Superman game and tie it into the bigger DC game universe. I would have my second Nightwing game have Batgirl in it, and then I would spin off into a Batgirl or Birds of Prey game. I would play it very safe. And eventually, by my third thing, like for the sequel to the Batman game, I would have it end on a cliffhanger again, introducing Jason Todd is still alive. And the third game would be Red Hood is the bad guy, and like solely the bad guy. No Scarecrow, no this other stuff. And I think I would do a time skip for the fourth game with Batman Beyond. That's what I would do. All right, guys. I'm spent. I got nothing else to say. I feel like I'm mourning someone now. I wish Dan Dido the best. He was a fun adversary. And I don't know. I hope DC is going to be okay. I hope that DC 5G is dead and gone. I hope that either Jeff Loeb or Goeff Johns takes up the role as a DC, head honcho. Because I think Jim Lee works better with a partner. Like an Abbott and Costello type thing he needs. Or even, it's kind of like a Blues Brother thing, because when Dan and Jim were together as a duo, not every decision at DC was bad. Like, there were some bad choices, but it wasn't monumentally bad like the disaster we had with Heroes in Crisis without Jim Lee. And, DC 5G without Jim Lee. Not everything Dido did was bad. Some of it he did was a train wreck, yeah, but, I mean, there's been worse people at DC. You guys don't remember the 80s and 90s direction that Batman books had back then, so, I mean, but anyway, I'm going to get back to my fun disco music. I hope you guys have a great night. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry for ignoring a lot of the super chats, but I'm spent. Hey, if you guys want to reach out to these YouTubers on my behalf, I mean, I'm sure that ad agency would love you, because I've been sitting on this contract that I'm supposed to have signed over a month and a half ago. So I'm kind of bad with that. I'm a very lazy person. I'm sorry. I like being behind my microphone, and that's about it. I might be streaming on my Let's Play channel tonight, but I have no idea what I'm going to do. Honestly, I mean, I'm on cloud 9 right now. I feel so bad, but it's like, I don't know. For the first time, I feel optimistic about something. I don't know. It's so bad. All right, you guys have a good one. Thanks so much for watching the Streets of Gotham and me just talking your ear off or whatever. Tomorrow will be a video on the new Batsuit. I'm going to break down different things I know about it. And I told you guys it was probably going to be like a utility belt that was based on a carpenter's belt, and I called it. Because that seems like the most realistic for like a younger Batman. And if it's something that Bruce is just throwing together, then it makes sense. And I'm happy about that, because it's like, yeah! Maybe people actually still listen to this old fool every once in a while over the past couple years. Because I've been saying that type of belt would work really well in the movies the past, like, 6 years or so. And I've had some viral videos, like, super viral, You never know. Never know. I don't know. Alright. You guys, peace out. It's disco time. Oh, my goodness. That was so much fun.